The letter arrived at the territorial prison in Santa Fe on a Tuesday morning in October of 1883, and Vincent James held it in his calloused hands like it might contain both salvation and damnation. His younger brother Cole had written in shaking handwriting that he had arranged for a bride to come from Missouri. A mail-order arrangement made through a matrimonial newspaper advertisement. But Cole would not be the one to meet her, because he was locked behind iron bars serving 15 years for a crime Vincent knew his brother did not commit. Vincent read the letter 3 times in the dusty yard outside the prison walls, the autumn sun beating down on his weathered hat, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a winter blanket. Cole had written that the woman's name was Zelda Kensington, that she was 23 years old, and believed she was coming west to marry a rancher with prospects, and that she would arrive at the Las Lunas station on the 20th of October expecting to be met by her intended husband. Cole's letter begged Vincent to meet her, to explain the situation, and to help her get back to Missouri if she wanted to leave. But there was something else in that letter, something desperate and pleading that Vincent could not ignore. Cole wrote that if Zelda was willing to stay and willing to wait, perhaps she might still have the life she had hoped for when Cole was finally freed from this injustice. Vincent folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his vest pocket. He was 26 years old and had spent the last 3 years trying to prove his brother's innocence while keeping their small ranch running outside of Las Lunas. The work was hard and endless, and there were days when Vincent wondered if he would ever see his brother ride free across their land again. But he had given Cole his word in that prison yard, looking through the bars into eyes that still held hope despite everything. He would meet Zelda Kensington at the station, and he would keep his promise to his brother no matter what it cost him. The ride from Santa Fe to Las Lunas took most of the day, and Vincent pushed his horse harder than he should have, arriving in town with dust coating his clothes and exhaustion pulling at his bones. He stopped at the boarding house first to secure a room for Zelda, paying Mrs. Henderson a week in advance and explaining only that a friend would be arriving and would need respectable lodging. Mrs. Henderson was a kind woman with gray hair and knowing eyes, and she asked no questions beyond what time the guest would arrive. Vincent spent the night in the small room above the saloon that he sometimes rented when ranch work kept him in town too late. He lay awake on the narrow bed, listening to the sounds of laughter and piano music drifting up through the floorboards, thinking about what he would say to a woman who had traveled hundreds of miles to marry a man she had never met, only to discover that man was in prison, and her dreams were shattered before they could even begin. Vincent had never been good with words. He was better with horses and cattle and the hard physical work that left no room for thinking. But tomorrow he would need to find the right words, and they would need to be honest ones. The train was late, which was not unusual for the Santa Fe railway line that ran through New Mexico territory. Vincent stood on the platform as the afternoon stretched toward evening, watching the rails shimmer in the heat and feeling sweat gather under his collar. Other people waited too. A Mexican family with 3 small children, an older gentleman in a suit that had seen better days, and 2 ranch hands who looked as restless as Vincent felt. When the train finally appeared on the horizon, its whistle cutting through the dry air, Vincent felt his heart begin to pound in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. The train hissed and groaned to a stop, releasing clouds of steam that obscured the platform for a moment. Vincent watched as passengers began to disembark, stepping down carefully with bags and trunks, squinting in the bright sunlight after the dim interior of the train cars. The Mexican family rushed forward to embrace a young woman, their voices rising in joyful Spanish. The ranch hands helped an elderly woman with her trunk, and then Vincent saw her. Zelda Kensington stepped down from the train with a small carpet bag in one hand and a worn traveling case in the other. She wore a simple gray traveling dress that showed the dust of the journey, and a bonnet that shaded her face but could not hide the determined set of her jaw, or the way her dark eyes scanned the platform looking for someone she had never seen. She was not what Vincent had expected, though he could not have said what he had expected. She was pretty, but not in a delicate way. There was strength in the way she stood, in the straight line of her spine and the capable way she set down her bags to adjust her bonnet. Her hair was dark brown, almost black, and a few strands had escaped to curl against her neck. She was average height, perhaps a few inches over 5 feet, and she moved with purpose rather than hesitation. Vincent removed his hat and stepped forward, his boots loud on the wooden platform. Her eyes found him immediately, and he saw her expression change from hopeful anticipation to uncertainty. He must have looked rough after the ride from Santa Fe, and he was suddenly aware of the dust on his clothes and the 2 days of stubble on his jaw. "Miss Kensington." His voice came out rougher than he intended. She studied him for a long moment, and Vincent saw intelligence and caution in those dark eyes. "Yes, I am Zelda Kensington. Are you Cole James?" Vincent felt something twist in his chest. "No, madam, I am Vincent James. Cole is my brother." The words hung between them in the cooling afternoon air. Vincent watched as understanding began to dawn on her face, followed quickly by confusion, and then the first edge of fear. "I do not understand," she said carefully. "The letters said Cole James would meet me here in Las Lunas." "The arrangements were all made." "Yes, madam, they were." Vincent turned his hat in his hands, searching for the right words. "Would you walk with me? There is a boarding house just down the street where I have secured you a room. I need to explain some things to you, and I would rather do it somewhere more private than this platform." Zelda did not move. "Why did your brother not come to meet me himself?" Vincent met her eyes steadily. "Because he is in the territorial prison in Santa Fe, serving 15 years for a crime he did not commit." The words fell like stones into water, and Vincent watched the ripples cross Zelda's face. Shock first, then anger, then something more complicated that he could not read. She stood very still for a long moment, and Vincent thought she might turn around and get right back on that train. But then she bent down, picked up her bags, and looked at him with an expression that was both fierce and controlled. "You had better explain everything, Mr. James. And it had better be the truth." They walked down the main street of Las Lunas side by side, but not together, Vincent carrying her heavy trunk on his shoulder while Zelda clutched her smaller bags. The town was small but growing, with adobe buildings mixing with newer wooden structures, and the smell of dust and horses and cooking fires hanging in the air. People watched them pass with open curiosity, and Vincent knew that by morning everyone in town would know that Vincent James had met a woman at the station and taken her to the boarding house. He would deal with the gossip later. Right now, he needed to keep his word to Cole. Mrs. Henderson met them at the door of the boarding house, her kind face creasing with welcome. She showed Zelda to a clean room on the 2nd floor with whitewashed walls and a window that looked out onto the street. There was a bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a small table with 2 chairs. Mrs. Henderson promised to bring up hot water and left them alone, closing the door but leaving it slightly ajar for propriety. Vincent set the trunk down carefully and stood near the door while Zelda removed her bonnet and set it on the bed. Her hair was pinned up but messy from the journey, and there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of long nights on the train and worry about what she would find at the end of the line. "Please sit down," she said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "And tell me the whole story from the beginning." So Vincent sat, and he told her everything. He told her about Cole, who was 3 years younger and had always been the charming one, the one who could make friends in any room and see the good in everyone. He told her about their ranch, small but growing, with good water and decent grazing land. He told her about the night 2 years ago when Cole had been in town, and a man named Robert Sterling had been shot during a card game at the saloon. Sterling had been a wealthy rancher from Texas, in Las Lunas looking to buy land, and when he died with Cole's knife in his back, the marshal had arrested Cole immediately. Cole had been in an argument with Sterling earlier that evening, Vincent said, his hands clenched on his knees. Sterling had cheated at cards and Cole called him on it. There were words, and Cole left the saloon. But someone went back later and killed Sterling, and they used Cole's knife to do it. The knife Cole had left behind on the bar when he walked out. Zelda listened without interrupting, her face composed but her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Did your brother have a trial?" "Yes, madam. But it was fast, and the judge was friends with Sterling's family. The evidence was all circumstantial, but the jury convicted him anyway. 15 years in the territorial prison. And you believe he is innocent?" Vincent looked at her directly. "I know he is innocent. Cole might have a temper and he might be too quick to defend his honor, but he is no killer. Someone else murdered Robert Sterling and set my brother up to take the fall." "Do you know who?" "I have suspicions, but no proof. Sterling's business partner, a man named Thomas Garrett, bought up Sterling's land holdings after his death for a fraction of what they were worth. He has been buying up land all over the territory since then, making himself rich. But suspicions are not enough to get a new trial or free my brother." Zelda stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening street. "Your brother sent for me knowing he was in prison." "He sent for you because he still has hope," Vincent said quietly. "Hope that someday he will be free and able to have the life he dreamed of. But he also knows that was not fair to you, which is why he asked me to meet you and explain everything. He wrote in his letter that I should help you get back to Missouri if that is what you want. He will understand." She was silent for a long moment, her back to him, her shoulders tense under the gray fabric of her dress. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but Vincent could hear the emotion underneath. "I sold everything I had to come here. My mother's china, my grandmother's jewelry, everything except what I could carry. I gave up my position as a teacher in a town where everyone knew me and thought I was foolish for answering a matrimonial advertisement. I said goodbye to my sister, who begged me not to go, who said I was making the biggest mistake of my life." She turned to face him, and her eyes were bright but tearless. "I came west because I wanted something more than what I had. I wanted land and sky and the chance to build something of my own. I wanted a partner who would work beside me and respect me as an equal. Your brother's letters promised me all of that." "He meant every word," Vincent said. "Cole is many things, but he is not a liar. But he is in prison and I am here, and I have nothing to go back to even if I wanted to." Zelda sat down again, her hands folded in her lap. "What did you promise your brother you would do, Mr. James?" Vincent met her eyes. "I promised I would meet you at the station and tell you the truth. I promised I would help you get home if you wanted to leave. And I promised that if you were willing to stay, I would do everything in my power to make sure you were safe and cared for until Cole can be freed. And how long might that be? Years? Decades? I do not know," Vincent admitted. "I am still working to find evidence that will exonerate him. But I will not lie to you, it could be a very long time." Zelda stood again, restless energy radiating from her. "I need time to think, and I need to be alone." Vincent rose and picked up his hat. "Mrs. Henderson will bring you supper." If you need anything, I will be at the saloon down the street tonight, or you can leave word and I will come. Where is your ranch? About an hour's ride west of town. Good land with a creek running through it. Cole and I built the house and the barn ourselves. And you run it alone now. I have a hired hand who comes a few days a week when I can afford to pay him. Mostly it is just me. She nodded slowly. Thank you for keeping your word to your brother, Mr. James. I will let you know my decision tomorrow. Vincent left her there in that small, clean room with the evening shadows lengthening across the floor. He walked back to the saloon feeling like he had just fought a battle and was not sure if he had won or lost. He kept seeing the way Zelda had stood at that window, the strength in her despite the disappointment that must have been tearing her apart inside. She had come so far for a dream that had turned into something else entirely, and Vincent did not know what she would choose to do. He spent the night in his rented room but did not sleep well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zelda's face, the intelligence in her dark eyes and the determined set of her jaw. She was nothing like what he had imagined when Cole had first told him about advertising for a bride. Vincent had pictured someone soft and fragile, someone who would need constant protection and would never survive the harsh realities of ranch life in New Mexico territory. But Zelda Kensington was different. There was steel in her, and Vincent found himself hoping she would decide to stay, not just for Cole's sake, but for reasons he was not quite ready to examine. Morning came with bright sunlight and the sounds of the town waking up. Vincent washed and shaved carefully, then went downstairs to find breakfast. He was drinking his second cup of bitter coffee when Mrs. Henderson approached his table. The young lady at the boarding house sent word that she would like to speak with you, Mrs. Henderson said, her eyes bright with curiosity. She is waiting in the parlor. Vincent paid for his breakfast and walked the short distance to the boarding house, his heart beating faster than it should. He found Zelda in the small parlor, dressed in a clean blue dress that made her eyes look darker. Her hair was neatly pinned and she looked more rested but no less serious. "Mr. James," she said when he entered, "please sit down." He took the chair across from her, his hat in his hands again, waiting for her to speak. "I have thought about everything you told me," Zelda said, "and I have come to a decision. I will stay." Vincent felt relief wash over him, stronger than he had expected. "I am glad to hear it, Miss Kensington. But I have conditions," she continued. "I did not come west to sit in a boarding house and wait for years for a man I have never met to be released from prison. I came here to work and to build something. So if I am going to stay, I need to be useful. I need to have purpose. What do you propose?" "I was a teacher in Missouri. I understand this town does not have a school yet, but I could start one, or I could work. I can cook and sew and keep accounts. I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. James." Vincent thought quickly. The ranch needs work. The house needs repairs and proper care. I have been living like a bachelor, cooking whatever I can manage and letting things go that should not be let go. If you were willing to come out to the ranch, there would be plenty for you to do. You could keep house and help with the accounts and the ranch records. I would pay you a fair wage. Zelda raised an eyebrow. And what would people in town say about an unmarried woman living on a ranch with an unmarried man? They would say plenty, I imagine. But if you want, we could arrange for you to stay with the Martinez family. They have a homestead about halfway between town and the ranch. Maria Martinez is a good woman, and I know she could use help with her children. You could stay with them and come to the ranch during the day to work. Or, Zelda said slowly, we could tell people the truth. That I came here to marry your brother, that your brother is unable to marry me right now, and that I am working as your housekeeper and employee until he is freed. Let them talk if they want. I am not ashamed of honest work. Vincent studied her for a long moment. "You are not what I expected, Miss Kensington." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would run back to Missouri on the first train." "I told you last night, I have nothing to run back to, and I am not a woman who gives up easily." She stood and smoothed her skirt. "When can I see this ranch of yours?" They rode out that afternoon, Zelda sitting side saddle on a gentle mare that Vincent borrowed from the livery stable. She had changed into a more practical dress and wore a wide-brimmed hat to shade her face from the sun. Vincent led the way on his own horse, a big bay gelding named Thunder, following the road west out of Las Lunas until they reached the turnoff to the ranch. The land spread out around them in rolling hills, covered with golden grass and scattered juniper trees. In the distance, the Manzano Mountains rose blue and purple against the sky. A creek ran through the property, lined with cottonwood trees that would turn gold in another month. The house was small but solidly built, made of adobe with a wooden porch and a roof that Vincent had repaired just last spring. The barn was larger, big enough for 6 horses and storage for hay and equipment. There were corrals and a chicken coop and a garden plot that had gone mostly to weeds. Vincent helped Zelda down from the horse and watched as she looked around, taking in everything with those intelligent dark eyes. He tried to see the place as she must see it, a lonely outpost in rough country, far from the civilized comforts of Missouri. But when she turned to him, there was something like satisfaction on her face. "It is beautiful," she said simply. "It needs work," Vincent said. "Cole and I built it 5 years ago when we first claimed this land. We had plans to expand, to build a bigger house and run more cattle. But then everything happened, and I have been just trying to keep things going. Show me the house." Vincent led her inside, suddenly aware of how bare and masculine the place was. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table and chairs, and shelves holding basic supplies. 2 small bedrooms opened off the main room, and there was a lean-to kitchen attached to the back. Everything was clean enough but sparse, lacking any of the touches that made a house a home. Zelda walked through slowly, noting the sturdy furniture and the good bones of the place. "This could be made comfortable," she said. "It needs curtains and perhaps some rugs. The kitchen needs better organization, but the structure is sound." "Cole built that table," Vincent said, running his hand over the smooth wood. "He was always better with finish work than I was. I am better with the rough construction. You must miss him very much." The simple statement, delivered without pity or drama, somehow cut deeper than any elaborate sympathy could have. "Every day," Vincent said quietly. "We have been partners since we were boys. Our parents died when I was 19 and Cole was 16. We have been on our own since then, building this together." Zelda turned to face him fully. "Then we will work together to get him back. And in the meantime, we will keep this ranch running so he has something to come home to." Over the next few weeks, a rhythm developed. Zelda stayed at the boarding house in town at first, and Vincent rode in each morning to collect her and bring her out to the ranch. She worked through the house like a small, determined storm, cleaning and organizing, making curtains from fabric she bought at the general store, and transforming the stark bachelor quarters into something that felt like a real home. She kept the accounts meticulously, writing down every expense and every bit of income from the cattle Vincent sold. She cooked meals that were better than anything Vincent had eaten in years, and she did it all without complaint or hesitation. Vincent found himself watching her when she was not looking, noticing the way she pushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, or the way she hummed softly to herself while she worked. She was efficient and capable, but there was also a gentleness to her that surprised him. She doctored a chicken that had been injured by a coyote and kept it in a box by the fire until it healed. She left out food for the barn cats and learned all the horses' names. They talked while they worked, long conversations about everything and nothing. Zelda told him about growing up in Missouri, about her parents who had died when she was young, about her sister who had married a banker and lived a respectable but boring life. Vincent told her about learning to ranch, about the hard winters and the dry summers, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. They did not talk much about Cole at first, the subject too painful and complicated for easy conversation. But gradually, as they grew more comfortable with each other, Vincent began to share stories about his brother, and Zelda began to ask questions. What made him decide to advertise for a bride? She asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. He said he was lonely, Vincent replied. We were doing well with the ranch, making plans for the future. He wanted to build a family, to have children and watch them grow up on this land. He said he was tired of being alone. And you, do you ever feel lonely? Vincent looked at her, at the way the fading light caught the angles of her face and made her eyes look almost black. I never thought much about it before. I had Cole and the work, and that seemed like enough. But lately, I have started to notice what is missing. Their eyes met and held for a moment too long, and Vincent saw something flicker in Zelda's expression before she looked away. The air between them felt charged somehow, different than it had been before. Vincent cleared his throat and stood up, suddenly needing to move, to do something with his hands. I should ride you back to town before it gets too dark. Actually, Zelda said, still looking out at the mountains, I wanted to talk to you about that. I think I should move out to the ranch permanently. Vincent froze. Miss Kensington, I do not think that would be proper. Probably not, she agreed. But it is practical. I am spending 2 hours a day traveling back and forth to town. That is time I could be using more productively. And I am paying Mrs. Henderson for a room I barely use. People will talk. People are already talking. Mrs. Henderson told me that half the town thinks I am your mistress, and the other half thinks I am delusional for staying here at all. She turned to face him. I do not care what people think, Mr. James. I care about doing work that matters and building something real. And I cannot do that if I am worried about propriety every moment. Vincent ran his hand through his hair, thinking hard. What if we make it official? Not the way you are thinking, he added quickly when he saw her expression. But what if I legally hired you as my housekeeper and partner in running the ranch? We could draw up papers, make it a business arrangement. That might quiet some of the gossip. And Cole, what would he think? Cole would want you to be safe and happy, and he would trust me to act honorably. Vincent met her eyes. I give you my word that you will be safe here, Miss Kensington. You have my word as a gentleman and as Cole's brother. I believe you, Zelda said softly. And please, if we are going to be living under the same roof, you should call me Zelda. Then you should call me Vincent. She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her whole face. Very well, Vincent. When can I move my things out here? They rode into Las Lunas the next day and visited the lawyer's office, where Vincent had papers drawn up hiring Zelda as his housekeeper and ranch manager with a fair wage and a percentage of the ranch's profits. The lawyer, an older man named Samuel Porter, looked at them over his spectacles with shrewd eyes but asked no improper questions. When the papers were signed and witnessed, Vincent paid Mrs. Henderson what was owed and helped Zelda move her few possessions out to the ranch. The first night with Zelda sleeping in the second bedroom, the one that had been Cole's, Vincent lay awake in his own room listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person in the house. It felt strange and right at the same time, and Vincent found himself thinking thoughts he knew he should not be thinking. Zelda had come here to marry his brother. She was waiting for Cole, and Vincent had given his word to watch over her until Cole was free. He could not allow himself to feel anything more than brotherly protection and friendship. But as the weeks passed and autumn deepened into early winter, Vincent found his resolve weakening. Zelda was everything a man could want in a partner. She was intelligent and hardworking, capable and kind. She could gentle a skittish horse and kill a chicken for dinner without flinching. She kept the house warm and welcoming, and she made Vincent laugh with her dry observations about the world. She asked his opinion on ranch decisions and offered her own insights that were often better than his. She fit into his life so seamlessly that Vincent sometimes forgot there had been a time when she was not there. But there were moments that reminded him sharply of the complicated situation they were in. Like when they rode into town together, and people whispered behind their hands. Or when Vincent rode up to Santa Fe to visit Cole in prison, and had to tell his brother how well Zelda was doing, how much she was helping with the ranch, and saw the hope and longing in Cole's eyes. Or when Zelda sat at night reading Cole's old letters by firelight, trying to know the man she had promised to marry. December came cold and clear, and with it came a visitor that changed everything. Vincent was working in the barn when he heard horses approaching. He stepped outside to see 3 men riding up the road, and his hand instinctively went to the rifle he kept near the barn door. But then he recognized the lead rider and relaxed slightly. Marshal Tom Bradshaw was a good man, honest and fair in a territory where those qualities were not always common. He had been the one who arrested Cole, but he had never seemed entirely convinced of Cole's guilt. The 2 men with him were deputies Vincent did not recognize. "Vincent," Bradshaw said, dismounting and extending his hand. "Sorry to come out unannounced, Marshal. What brings you out here? Official business, I am afraid. There have been complaints about your living situation." Bradshaw looked uncomfortable. "About the woman staying here with you." Vincent felt his jaw tighten. "Miss Kensington is my employee. We have legal papers drawn up. She is my housekeeper and helps run the ranch." "I know. I saw the papers at Porter's office. But some folks in town are not satisfied with that explanation. They think it is improper for an unmarried woman to be living alone with an unmarried man, regardless of business arrangements. Some folks need to mind their own business." "Normally, I would agree with you," Bradshaw said. "But one of those folks is Judge Morrison, and he has asked me to look into the situation. He is concerned about moral standards in the territory." Vincent felt cold anger settle in his gut. Judge Morrison was the same judge who had presided over Cole's trial, the same judge who had been friends with Robert Sterling's family. "This has nothing to do with morality and everything to do with Morrison trying to make trouble for me and my brother." "Maybe so," Bradshaw agreed. "But my hands are tied. I have to make a report." The door to the house opened, and Zelda stepped out onto the porch. She had been baking bread, and flour dusted her dress and her hair. She looked at the 3 men with curiosity but no fear. "Good afternoon, Marshal," she said calmly. "Would you and your men like some coffee?" Bradshaw removed his hat. "That is kind of you, Miss Kensington, but we cannot stay long. I was just explaining to Vincent that there have been some concerns raised about your living situation here." "Yes, I heard from inside," Zelda said, wiping her hands on her apron. "People believe it is improper for me to work here." "That is the essence of it, madam. I see." Zelda came down the steps and stood beside Vincent, her chin raised. "And what do these concerned people suggest I do instead?" "Go back to Missouri, where I have nothing and no one. Live in town spending money I do not have. Or perhaps they think I should starve quietly so as not to offend their delicate sensibilities." One of the deputies coughed to hide what might have been a laugh. Bradshaw shifted his weight uncomfortably. I am just delivering the message, Miss Kensington. I am not saying I agree with it. What would satisfy the judge? Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice level. Bradshaw hesitated. He suggested that if you and Miss Kensington were to marry, that would resolve the impropriety. The words fell into a sudden silence. Vincent felt Zelda go still beside him, and he could not look at her. "That is impossible," Vincent said finally. "Miss Kensington is betrothed to my brother." "Your brother who is in prison," Bradshaw said gently. "Look, Vincent, I am not trying to make trouble for you, but Judge Morrison has the power to make things very difficult if he chooses. He could force Miss Kensington to leave the territory altogether. Or he could revoke your land claim on moral grounds. He has done it before to people who crossed him." Vincent felt trapped. Everything he and Cole had built, everything they had worked for, could be taken away by a corrupt judge with a grudge. And Zelda, who had already lost so much and come so far, would lose again. "We need time to think," Zelda said, her voice steady despite the situation. "Thank you for the warning, Marshal Bradshaw." Bradshaw nodded and mounted his horse. "I will tell the judge I delivered the message. But you should know he wants an answer within 2 weeks." He tipped his hat and rode off with his deputies, leaving Vincent and Zelda standing in the dusty yard. They went inside without speaking, and Zelda returned to her bread while Vincent sat at the table trying to think through their options. None of them were good. If they did nothing, they would face the judge's wrath and likely lose everything. If Zelda left, she would be destitute and alone, and the ranch would suffer without her help. And if they married to satisfy the judge and protect the ranch, they would be betraying Cole in the worst possible way. "There is another option," Zelda said quietly, still kneading dough. "One we have not discussed yet." "What is that?" "We could actually marry. Not just for appearance, but truly. And when Cole is released, if he still wants to marry me, he can. New Mexico territory allows a man to have more than one wife under certain circumstances." Vincent stared at her. "Zelda, that is not legal. You are thinking of Utah territory, and even there it is complicated and mostly practiced by Mormons." "Then what do you suggest?" She turned to face him, her eyes bright with frustration and unshed tears. "I will not be forced to leave, Vincent. I will not let Morrison win. And I will not let you lose this ranch because you kept your word to your brother." Vincent stood and crossed to her, wanting to comfort her but not knowing how. "We will find another way." "What way? Tell me what magical solution will satisfy a corrupt judge and protect all of us." "I do not know yet, but I will figure something out, I promise." "You and your promises," Zelda said, but there was no heat in it. She looked tired suddenly, worn down by the constant struggle. "I am sorry. I know none of this is your fault. It is not your fault either. You came here in good faith, and you have worked harder than anyone could have expected. This situation is wrong, and Morrison is using it to punish me for defending my brother. So what do we do?" Vincent made a decision. "Tomorrow I ride to Santa Fe to talk to Cole. He has a right to know what is happening and to have a say in how we handle it. Whatever we decide, we will decide together, all 3 of us." The ride to Santa Fe the next day was long and cold, with winter clouds gathering over the mountains. Vincent pushed thunder hard, arriving at the prison as afternoon faded toward evening. The guard at the gate knew him by now and let him through with minimal fuss. Cole was brought to the visiting area, a small room with a table and 2 chairs and bars on the windows. Cole looked thinner than the last time Vincent had seen him, his face pale from lack of sunlight and his eyes hollow. But his smile when he saw Vincent was genuine. "Vincent, I did not expect you until next month. Something has come up. We need to talk." Vincent told him everything, about Zelda staying on at the ranch, about how well she had fit in and how much help she had been, about the complaints and the marshal's visit and Judge Morrison's ultimatum. Cole listened without interrupting, his hands clenched on the scarred wooden table. When Vincent finished, Cole was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, his voice rough. "How do you feel about her?" The question caught Vincent off guard. "She is a good worker and a kind person. She has been invaluable to keeping the ranch running." "That is not what I asked." Cole looked at his brother with eyes that still held that old sharpness, that ability to see through any deception. "I have known you all your life, Vincent. I know when you are avoiding something. How do you feel about Zelda?" Vincent met his brother's gaze. "It does not matter how I feel. She came here for you. You sent for her. You made promises to her. I am just keeping my word to watch over her. But you care for her." It was not a question. Vincent felt something break open inside him. "I do. God help me, Cole, I do, but I would never act on it. I would never betray you like that." Cole closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, there were tears there. "You are the best man I know, Vincent, the most honorable. And you have been carrying this burden alone for 2 years, trying to prove my innocence and keep the ranch going, and now taking care of a woman I sent for but cannot provide for. It is not fair to you. Life is not fair, but we do what we have to do." "Yes, we do." Cole leaned forward. "So here is what we are going to do. You are going to marry Zelda." "No, Cole, I cannot. You can and you will. Listen to me. I am going to be in this prison for years, maybe more than a decade. I have been doing the math, Vincent. Even with good behavior, I will not be eligible for release for at least another 13 years. Zelda will be 36 years old. She deserves better than that. She deserves a life and a family and all the things she came west to find. She came west for you. She came west for a dream that I sold her in letters. But the man in those letters does not exist anymore. I have been in prison for 2 years and I can feel myself changing, getting harder, angrier. I do not know who I will be if I ever get out of here. But I know Zelda needs someone now, and the ranch needs someone, and you need someone. You love her, do not you?" Vincent could not lie to his brother. "Yes, I think I do." "Then marry her. Build a life with her. Keep the ranch going. And when I get out, if I get out, we will figure things out then. But I will not have you both suffering because of a promise I made before I knew how things would turn out. Cole, you are my brother. How can I do this? Because I am asking you to. Because I am giving you my blessing. Vincent, if you love her and she is willing, then marry her and do not look back. Give her the life she deserves, and tell her I am sorry for everything." Vincent felt tears burning in his own eyes now. "I will prove your innocence. I swear to you I will find the evidence and get you out of here. I know you will try, but do not put your life on hold waiting for that day. Promise me." "I promise." They sat in silence for a moment, brothers separated by iron bars and injustice, but connected by bonds that could not be broken. Then the guard came to say visiting time was over, and Vincent had to leave. He rode back to Las Lunas through gathering darkness, his mind churning with everything Cole had said. When he reached the ranch, the windows were glowing with lamplight and smoke rose from the chimney. Vincent put Thunder in the barn and stood for a moment looking at the house, this place he and Cole had built together. Then he went inside. Zelda was sitting by the fire mending one of his shirts. She looked up when he entered, her eyes searching his face. "How is Cole?" "He is surviving. And he wants us to marry." Zelda set down her mending carefully. "He does." Vincent crossed to stand by the fire, warming his cold hands. "He said he does not want us to sacrifice our lives waiting for him. He said we should marry and build a life together and not feel guilty about it." "And what do you want, Vincent?" He turned to look at her then, really look at her, letting himself see what he had been trying to ignore for weeks. The way the firelight caught in her dark hair, the intelligence and strength in her face. The way she made this house feel like home. The way his heart lifted every morning when he saw her smile. "I want to marry you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not because Judge Morrison is forcing us, not just to protect the ranch, but because I have come to care for you deeply, Zelda. Because I think you and I could build something good together, but only if that is what you want too. I will not force you into anything." Zelda stood and came to him, stopping just a foot away. She reached up and touched his face gently, and Vincent felt his breath catch. "I have been fighting my own feelings for weeks," she said softly. "Telling myself that I came here for Cole, that I had no right to feel anything for you. But the heart does not always follow logic, does it? No, it does not. I do care for you, Vincent. I care for your honor and your kindness and your strength. I care for the way you work until your hands bleed to keep this ranch going. I care for the way you have never made me feel like a burden or an obligation. And I think, given time, I could love you very much." Vincent put his hands on her waist, pulling her closer. "We would have to tell people the truth, that we are marrying to satisfy the judge, but also because we want to. I will not have you shamed or treated with disrespect. I do not care what people think. I stopped caring about that the day I got on that train in Missouri. Then will you marry me, Zelda Kensington? Will you be my wife and my partner and help me build a life on this land?" "Yes," she said, smiling through tears. "Yes, I will." Vincent kissed her then, gently at first and then with growing passion, all the feelings he had been suppressing finally finding expression. Zelda kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms going around his neck, and Vincent thought that despite everything that had gone wrong, despite the injustice and the heartbreak, maybe something right was finally happening. They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the church in Las Lunas. Mrs. Henderson served as witness, beaming with approval, and even Marshal Bradshaw attended, looking relieved that the situation had been resolved peacefully. Zelda wore a blue dress she had sewn herself, and Vincent wore his best clothes and boots polished until they shone. They spoke their vows clearly and sincerely, and when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed his new bride with joy. The town gradually accepted the marriage, though there was still gossip and speculation. Vincent made it clear to anyone who asked that they had married with Cole's blessing, and that they intended to keep fighting for Cole's freedom. Most people understood, or at least pretended to, and over time the talk died down. Life on the ranch settled into a new pattern. Zelda was no longer just the housekeeper but Vincent's true partner, making decisions with him about the cattle and the land, working beside him from sunrise to sunset. At night, they shared the larger bedroom, and Vincent discovered that marriage to Zelda was everything he had never known he wanted. She was passionate and tender, fierce and gentle, always surprising him with new depths to her character. Winter passed into spring, and spring into summer. Vincent made regular trips to Santa Fe to visit Cole, always bringing news of the ranch and carefully edited stories of his and Zelda's life together. Cole seemed genuinely happy for them, though Vincent could see the sadness in his brother's eyes. They talked less about the past and more about the future, about what would happen when Cole was finally freed. Vincent continued to search for evidence that would exonerate his brother, spending his spare time in town talking to anyone who might know something about Robert Sterling's death. It was slow work and often frustrating, but he refused to give up. In late summer, Zelda told Vincent she was pregnant. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "There is a baby," she said simply. "Our baby." Vincent felt joy and fear wash over him in equal measure. A child was a blessing, but it also made everything more complicated. What would Cole think? What would happen when he was released and found Vincent and Zelda had built not just a life but a family together? Are you happy? Zelda asked, watching his face. Yes, Vincent said, and realized it was true. Yes, I am very happy and terrified. She laughed. That seems appropriate for becoming a parent. We should tell Cole. I know, but Vincent, whatever happens in the future, this child is ours. Yours and mine. And I will not apologize for that or feel guilty about it. Neither will I, Vincent said, pulling her close. Cole gave us his blessing to build a life together. This is part of that life. When Vincent rode to Santa Fe the next week to tell Cole the news, he braced himself for anger or bitterness. But Cole surprised him again. His eyes filled with tears when Vincent told him, and he gripped the bars separating them with white knuckles. I am going to be an uncle, Cole said, his voice thick. That is wonderful, Vincent, truly. You are not angry. How could I be angry about a new life, about hope in the future? Cole wiped his eyes. I am grateful that you are giving this child everything I cannot, a father who is there. A home that is safe and stable. Tell Zelda I am happy for both of you. I will. Cole, I am still working on finding evidence. I met with a man last week who used to work for Thomas Garrett. He hinted that Garrett might have been involved in Sterling's death, but he was too afraid to say anything directly. I think if I keep pushing, I can find proof. Just be careful, Cole warned. Garrett is a dangerous man with powerful friends. Do not put yourself or Zelda at risk. Vincent promised to be careful, but he was more determined than ever. His child deserved to grow up knowing both his father and his uncle, and Vincent would not stop fighting until Cole was free. The months passed, and Zelda's pregnancy progressed. She continued working on the ranch as long as she was able, stubborn and independent to the last. Mrs. Henderson came out from town when the baby was due, and Vincent paced the porch nervously while Zelda labored in their bedroom. When he finally heard the baby's first cry, he felt something shift in his chest, some fundamental change that he could not describe. Mrs. Henderson came out carrying a bundle wrapped in soft blankets. You have a son, she said, placing the baby in Vincent's arms. A healthy, strong boy. Vincent looked down at the tiny red face, the small hands waving in the air, and felt overwhelming love. The baby had dark hair like Zelda and a determined expression even in sleep. He was perfect. Zelda, Vincent asked. She is fine. Tired but well. Go see your wife. Vincent carried his son into the bedroom, where Zelda lay pale but smiling against the pillows. She held out her arms, and Vincent carefully placed the baby in them, then sat on the edge of the bed. He is beautiful, Zelda said, tears streaming down her face. Perfect. What should we name him? Zelda looked up at him. I was thinking we could name him after your brother, Cole Vincent James, so he will always have both of you with him. Vincent felt his throat tighten. Cole would like that, but are you sure? It might be strange to have a son named after the man you were supposed to marry. I was supposed to marry a dream, Zelda said gently. I ended up married to a real man who I love with all my heart, and Cole gave us his blessing to build this family. Naming our son after him seems right. So Cole Vincent James was christened in the church in Las Lunas, with half the town attending and Mrs. Henderson serving as godmother. Vincent wrote to Cole immediately after the birth, telling him about his namesake and including a sketch that Zelda had drawn of the baby. Cole's response came 2 weeks later, full of love and pride and only a little sadness. Life with a baby was both harder and more wonderful than Vincent had imagined. Little Cole was a good baby, healthy and strong, with Zelda's determination and Vincent's stubbornness. Vincent found himself working harder than ever, driven by the need to provide for his growing family. The ranch prospered, the cattle herd grew, and Vincent was able to hire more help, which gave him more time to spend with Zelda and the baby. But he never stopped searching for evidence to free his brother. He followed every lead, no matter how small, talking to people all over the territory who might know something about Robert Sterling's death or Thomas Garrett's business dealings. It was dangerous work. Twice, men he had questioned were found dead under suspicious circumstances. Vincent knew he was getting close to something, but he could not figure out what it was. Then, in the spring of 1885, nearly 2 years after Vincent and Zelda had married, the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young woman came to the ranch one afternoon, riding a tired horse and looking frightened. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she said she had information about Robert Sterling's murder. Vincent brought her into the house, and Zelda made her tea while Sarah told her story. She had been working as a serving girl at the saloon the night Sterling was killed. She had seen Thomas Garrett go upstairs to Sterling's room after Cole had left the saloon. She had heard arguing, and then she had heard a gunshot that sounded like it was muffled somehow. Later, when Sterling's body was found with Cole's knife in his back, she had been confused because she had not seen Cole return to the saloon. "Why did you not tell anyone this before?" Vincent asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the excitement and anger churning inside him. "Because Garrett threatened me," Sarah said, her hands shaking around the teacup. "He said if I told anyone what I saw, he would kill me and make sure no one ever found my body. I believed him. I have seen what happens to people who cross Thomas Garrett. But then I heard you were still trying to prove Cole James was innocent, and I thought maybe it was time someone told the truth. I am leaving the territory anyway, going to California where Garrett cannot find me. But before I go, I wanted to give you this." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. "I kept a diary of everything that happened that night, what I saw, what I heard, the exact times. I even drew a sketch of Garrett going up the stairs. It is not much, but maybe it will help." Vincent took the notebook with trembling hands. "This could change everything. Sarah, you are very brave to come forward. I should have done it 2 years ago. Maybe then Cole would not have spent all this time in prison." Tears ran down her face. "I am sorry I was such a coward." "You were protecting yourself," Zelda said gently. "No one can blame you for that." Sarah left an hour later, and Vincent immediately rode into Las Lunas to find Marshal Bradshaw. The marshal listened to Vincent's story and examined Sarah's diary carefully. "This is compelling," Bradshaw said, "but it is not going to be easy to act on. Garrett has a lot of influence with Judge Morrison. We would need more than one witness's testimony, especially testimony from someone who is admittedly leaving the territory." "Then help me find more evidence," Vincent said urgently. "Search Garrett's property. Talk to his employees. Someone else must know something." "I will do what I can," Bradshaw promised. "But Vincent, you need to be careful. If Garrett finds out you are this close to exposing him, he might do something desperate." Vincent knew the marshal was right, but he could not stop now. He was so close to freeing his brother, to righting the terrible wrong that had been done. Over the next few weeks, he worked closely with Marshal Bradshaw, quietly gathering evidence and talking to more witnesses. They discovered that Garrett had bought off several people to ensure Cole's conviction, including one of the jurors and a witness who had falsely testified that he had seen Cole return to the saloon. They found financial records showing that Garrett had profited enormously from Sterling's death, acquiring his land and business interests for almost nothing. Finally, in early June of 1885, they had enough evidence to present to the territorial governor in Santa Fe. Vincent rode to the capital with Marshal Bradshaw, carrying all the documentation they had gathered. The governor listened to their case and agreed to order a new investigation into Sterling's murder and Cole's conviction. The investigation moved slowly, as these things always did, but it moved forward. Thomas Garrett was arrested and charged with Sterling's murder. Several of his associates turned on him, offering testimony in exchange for leniency. By August, the case against Garrett was solid, and the territorial court overturned Cole's conviction. Vincent was at the prison the day Cole was released. He watched his brother walk out through the gates into the bright sunshine, a free man for the first time in 3 years. Cole looked older and thinner, his eyes carrying shadows that had not been there before. But when he saw Vincent, his face broke into a genuine smile. The brothers embraced, and Vincent felt tears streaming down his face. "Welcome home, Cole." "Thank you for never giving up," Cole said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for keeping your word." They rode back to Las Lunas together, and Vincent told Cole everything that had happened, about the ranch's growth and little Cole's first steps and all the small details that made up a life. Cole listened quietly, asking occasional questions but mostly just absorbing the information. When they reached the ranch, Zelda was waiting on the porch with young Cole in her arms. The little boy was 18 months old now, walking and talking and full of energy. Vincent helped his brother down from his horse and watched as Zelda came forward. "Cole," she said simply, "welcome home." There was an awkward moment when none of them quite knew what to say. Then Cole stepped forward and embraced Zelda carefully, like she might break. "Thank you for taking care of my brother," he said, "and for giving him a family. I am grateful." "You are welcome here," Zelda said. "This is your home too." Vincent showed Cole to the second bedroom, which Zelda had prepared with fresh sheets and wildflowers on the table. Cole stood in the doorway looking at the simple room with something like wonder. "It has been so long since I had a real bed," he said, "or privacy or windows without bars." "Take your time settling in," Vincent said. "We will have supper in an hour." That evening, the three of them sat around the table while little Cole played on the floor with wooden blocks Vincent had carved. They talked about the trial that had freed Cole and the sentence that Garrett would face. They talked about the ranch and the plans for expanding the herd. But they did not talk about the complicated emotions underlying everything, about the fact that Cole was now living with his brother and the woman who should have been his wife. Over the following weeks and months, a new equilibrium developed. Cole threw himself into ranch work with an intensity that worried Vincent sometimes. He worked from dawn until long after dark, pushing himself to exhaustion every day. At night he was quiet, often sitting alone on the porch looking out at the land while Vincent and Zelda put young Cole to bed. Vincent tried to talk to his brother several times, but Cole insisted he was fine, just readjusting to freedom. But Vincent could see the loneliness in his brother's eyes, the way Cole watched Vincent and Zelda together with something that might have been longing or regret or both. One evening in late autumn, nearly 4 months after Cole had come home, Vincent found his brother sitting by the creek watching the sunset. He sat down beside him without speaking for a while. "I am thinking about leaving," Cole said finally. "What? Why?" "Because I do not belong here anymore, Vincent. This is your ranch now, yours and Zelda's. Your family. I am grateful for everything you have done for me, for never giving up on proving my innocence. But every day I am here, I am reminded of what I lost, the life I could have had. Cole, you are my brother. You helped build this place. You have every right to be here. I have the legal right, maybe, but not the emotional right. I see you with Zelda the way you love each other, and I am happy for you. Truly I am, but it also hurts, Vincent. It hurts to see what might have been mine if things had been different." Vincent felt his chest tighten. "Where would you go?" "I have been thinking about Montana Territory. I hear there is good land up there, open range that needs ranchers. I could file a claim, start over fresh somewhere no one knows my history. You would go alone. For now. Maybe eventually I will find someone, start my own family. But right now, I need distance. I need to figure out who I am as a free man without constantly being reminded of the past. Vincent wanted to argue to convince his brother to stay, but he understood what Cole was saying. Sometimes the kindest thing was to let someone go. When were you thinking of leaving? After the first of the year. That will give me time to help with winter preparations and to say proper goodbyes. Zelda will be sad to see you go, and young Cole should know his uncle. I will come back to visit, Cole promised, and you can come to Montana once I am established. We are still brothers, Vincent. That will never change, but I need to build my own life now, separate from yours. That night, Vincent told Zelda about Cole's plans. She was quiet for a long time, her hands busy with mending while their son slept in the next room. I feel guilty, she said finally, like we are pushing him out. We are not pushing him out. He is choosing to go, and I think it is the right choice for him, even if it is hard for us. Do you think he will ever forgive me for marrying you instead of waiting for him? Vincent set down the accounts he had been working on and went to sit beside his wife. There is nothing to forgive, Zelda. Cole gave us his blessing. What we built together, our marriage and our family, it is not something we should feel guilty about. I know, but my heart still hurts for him. Mine does too. Cole left on a cold January morning in 1886. Vincent helped him pack his supplies and gave him one of their best horses along with money to help him get started in Montana. Zelda gave him a package of food for the journey and a carefully wrapped bundle. "What is this?" Cole asked. "Letters," Zelda said. "All the letters you sent me before we met. I thought you might want them back, or maybe you want to destroy them. Either way, they are yours." Cole took the bundle carefully. "Thank you for everything, Zelda. I hope you know that I do not blame you for anything. You came here in good faith, and you have been nothing but kind to me. You will always have a home here," Zelda said, "whenever you want to come back." Cole embraced her briefly, then turned to Vincent. The brothers looked at each other for a long moment, years of shared history and complicated emotions passing between them. "Take care of them," Cole said. "I will, and you take care of yourself. I will write when I get settled. You had better." They embraced, and then Cole mounted his horse and rode away down the road toward the north. Vincent and Zelda stood watching until he disappeared from view, young Cole between them holding both their hands. Life went on. The ranch continued to prosper, and Vincent and Zelda's family grew. A daughter named Clara was born in 1887, with her mother's dark hair and her father's determination. Then a second son, James, arrived in 1889. The house that Vincent and Cole had built was expanded to accommodate the growing family, with more bedrooms and a larger kitchen, and a parlor where the children could play on cold winter evenings. Cole wrote regularly from Montana, letters full of descriptions of the vast open land and the challenges of starting a ranch from nothing. After 2 years, he wrote that he had met a woman, a widow named Mary, who had 2 young children of her own. They were courting, and Cole thought he might finally be ready to build the family he had once dreamed of. Vincent and Zelda celebrated the news, genuinely happy that Cole was finding his own path to happiness. In the summer of 1890, Cole returned to Las Lunas for a visit, bringing Mary and her children with him. Mary was a practical, kind woman with a warm smile and steady hands. Her children, a boy and a girl, were shy at first but quickly warmed up to young Cole and Clara. The 2 families spent 2 weeks together, working on the ranch during the day and talking long into the evenings. One night, Vincent and Cole sat on the porch alone, passing a bottle of whiskey back and forth. "You seem happy," Vincent said. "I am. Mary is a good woman, and I love her children like they are my own. We are planning to marry this fall. I am glad for you, Cole, truly. I am glad for you too. You and Zelda built something good here. A real family, a prosperous ranch. It is what we both always wanted. Do you ever regret how things turned out? Wish you could have what I have? Cole was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. But then I think about what might have happened if I had never been arrested, if I had met Zelda at that station like I was supposed to. Maybe we would have been happy. Or maybe we would have realized we were not right for each other. I will never know. But I do know that you and Zelda are right for each other. Anyone can see that. So no, I do not regret it. Things worked out the way they were supposed to, even if the path was harder than any of us expected. You are a better man than I am, Vincent said. I do not know if I could be so understanding. You kept your word when I could not. You took care of someone I asked you to protect, and you did not take advantage of the situation. You waited until I gave you permission to move forward. That takes honor, Vincent. That takes strength. I have never blamed you for loving her. How could I when you love her so well? The two brothers sat in comfortable silence after that, looking out at the land they both loved, each building their own version of the dream they had once shared. Cole and Mary married that autumn in Montana, and Vincent and Zelda made the long journey north with their children to attend the wedding. It was a simple ceremony in a small church, followed by a celebration at Cole's ranch. Vincent saw how happy his brother was with Mary, how naturally he interacted with her children, and felt profound relief. Cole had found his own happiness, his own family, and the complicated past could finally be just that, the past. The years rolled by with their mixture of joy and hardship. There were good years when the cattle prices were high and the rains came at the right time. There were bad years with drought and disease and prices so low that Vincent wondered if they would lose everything. But through it all, he and Zelda worked together, facing each challenge as partners. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning to ride and work cattle and appreciate the land that was their inheritance. Young Cole, named for his uncle, grew into a serious young man who loved books as much as ranching. He talked about becoming a lawyer someday, about using the law to protect people the way his father had fought to protect his uncle. Clara was fierce and independent, insisting on learning to rope and brand alongside her brothers. James was the wild one, always getting into trouble but with a charm that usually got him out of it. In 1895, when young Cole was 10 years old, Vincent received a letter from the governor's office. Thomas Garrett, who had been serving a life sentence for Robert Sterling's murder, had died in prison. The news brought complicated feelings. Justice had been served, but it had come at such a high cost. 3 years of Cole's life had been stolen, and the ripple effects had changed the course of multiple lives forever. That evening, Vincent showed the letter to Zelda. They were sitting on the porch as they often did, watching the sunset and listening to their children play in the yard. "It is over," Zelda said. "Finally, truly over." "Is it? I still think about what might have been. What would have happened if Cole had never been arrested, if things had gone according to plan?" "We cannot live in what might have been," Zelda said gently. "We can only live in what is." And what is, Vincent, is a good life. A life full of love and family and work that matters. That is more than many people ever get. You are right, I am lucky. We are lucky. We made our own luck, through hard choices and hard work and refusing to give up when things were difficult. Zelda took his hand. "I have never regretted marrying you, Vincent, not for one single day. I hope you know that. I do. And I have never regretted it either. You were supposed to marry my brother, but you ended up being exactly who I needed. I love you, Zelda. More than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too. And I am grateful every day that you kept your word to Cole, even when it was hard. even when it meant taking on responsibilities that were not yours. That honor and determination is what made me fall in love with you." They sat together in the fading light, hands intertwined, surrounded by the sounds of their children and the land they had worked so hard to build into something lasting. Cole visited when he could, and the James brothers remained close despite the distance between them. Cole and Mary had 2 children of their own, a boy and a girl, and their ranch in Montana prospered. When young Cole turned 18 and left for law school in the East, Uncle Cole traveled down from Montana to celebrate with them. When Clara married a neighboring rancher at 20, both Cole brothers walked her down the aisle together. When James decided to join the cavalry and see the world beyond New Mexico, Cole came to say goodbye and wish him well. Vincent and Zelda grew old together on the ranch they had built. They celebrated their 20th anniversary in 1905, with all 3 of their children home for the occasion, along with Cole and Mary and their growing families. It was a loud, joyful gathering that lasted for days, with children and grandchildren running everywhere and long meals around an expanded table that barely fit everyone. On the last evening of the celebration, after everyone else had gone to bed, Vincent and Cole sat on the porch one more time, both men in their 50s now but still strong from lives of hard work. "We did all right, did not we?" Cole said. "Better than all right. We survived and built something worth having. Do you ever think about that day at the prison when I told you to marry Zelda? Sometimes. It was the hardest conversation we ever had. I meant what I said that day. I wanted you both to be happy. And I have never regretted pushing you to move forward. You gave her the life she deserved, and you gave me the freedom to find my own happiness eventually. We were lucky, Cole. Things could have gone so much worse. Luck had something to do with it. But mostly it was love and honor and refusing to let injustice win. You fought for me when everyone else believed I was guilty. You kept your word even when it cost you. That matters, Vincent. That makes all the difference." Vincent looked at his brother, at the gray in his hair and the lines on his face and the peace in his eyes. "I would do it all again. Every hard choice, every sacrifice, because it brought me here to this life with Zelda and our children, and it brought you to Mary and your family. Maybe the path was not what we expected, but the destination was worth it." "Agreed," Cole said, raising his glass. "To keeping your word, to family, to second chances, to all of that," Vincent said, clinking his glass against his brother's. They sat in comfortable silence after that. 2 brothers who had weathered storms and come through stronger, looking out at the land that had shaped them and the families that surrounded them with love. Vincent lived to be 72 years old, dying peacefully in his sleep in 1929 with Zelda holding his hand. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved. His children and grandchildren stood around the grave, along with Cole and his family, all of them mourning a man who had lived with honor and built something lasting. Zelda lived another 6 years after Vincent died, cared for by her children, and spending her days in the house she and Vincent had made into a home. She told stories to her grandchildren about the Wild West of her youth, about trains and mail-order brides and a cowboy who had kept his word even when it was hard. She died at age 75, and she was buried beside Vincent on that hill, their graves side by side for eternity. The ranch passed to their children, who worked it together and eventually passed it to their own children. Young Cole did become a lawyer, but he never forgot his roots. He spent his career fighting for justice and representing people who could not afford proper legal defense. Clara and her husband expanded their holdings, becoming one of the most successful ranching families in New Mexico. James returned from the cavalry and bought land near his parents' ranch, raising horses and living the adventurous life he had always wanted. Cole James outlived his brother by 3 years, dying at 75 surrounded by his large extended family. He was buried in Montana, but his children brought a box of soil from the New Mexico ranch to sprinkle on his grave, connecting him one last time to the land and the brother who had saved him. The story of how Vincent James kept his word became family legend, passed down through generations. They told how a man in prison had sent for a bride he would never meet, how his brother had met her at the station and explained the impossible situation, and how love had grown in unexpected places. They told how honor and determination had overcome injustice, and how hard choices had led to happiness for everyone involved. And on that hill overlooking the ranch, 2 headstones stood side by side. Vincent James, devoted husband and father, man of honor. Zelda James, beloved wife and mother, woman of courage. Their graves faced the mountains and the endless New Mexico sky, markers of a love that had started with a promise kept and grown into something that lasted beyond their lifetimes. The ranch still stood, worked by their descendants, a testament to what 2 people could build when they committed to each other and to the land. And sometimes, in the evening when the light was fading and the air was cool, people said you could see 2 figures sitting on the old porch, side by side, looking out at everything they had created together. A cowboy who kept his word, a mail-order bride who stayed, and a love story that proved that sometimes the unexpected path leads exactly where you need to go.